A vocal critic of Donald Trump is supporting his push to fill the vacant Supreme Court seat. Republican Senator Mitt Romney's endorsement means the president's pick will likely now be confirmed in the Senate. That's if the Democrats don't stop the process altogether.
The timing for the announcement of President Trump's nominee is likely Saturday afternoon before he leaves for a Pennsylvania campaign rally. President Trump today indicating he has all but made up his mind on who it will be.
I would say that I'm very close to making a decision in my own mind, and I'm going to reveal it on Saturday.
Sources tell Fox News the top contender continues to be Judge Amy Coney Barrett of the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. Also in the running, the 11th Circuit's Barbara Lagoa, Judge Joan Larson of the 6th Circuit, and 4th Circuit Judge Allison Jones Rushing.
Hey guys, how you doing?
President Trump got good news today when Utah Senator Mitt Romney said he is on board for a vote before the election.
The decision to proceed with a new nominee is also consistent with history and precedent, and that's where I come out.
With Senators Cory Gardner and Chuck Grassley also saying they will vote, President Trump has 51 Republicans ready to go forward. The president believes he has the time before Election Day to get it done.
We have nothing but time, especially since we have the support. You know, we have senatorial support. People have come out, and I guess we have all the votes we're going to need. They're going to be very happy with the candidate.
Democrats today ramped up their efforts to block the nomination. Chuck Schumer issuing a scathing indictment of Majority Leader Mitch McConnell.
Sadly, Leader McConnell has defiled the Senate like no one in this generation. And Leader McConnell may very well destroy it.
Let's get some analysis with Greg Sheridan, foreign editor at The Australian. And Greg, beyond the implications for the election, for the court itself, it could have, in terms of swinging the balance to the Conservatives. If the election result is litigated, it also has implications.
Oh, it sure does, Kieran. I mean, in itself, it's an enormous decision because the Supreme Court is the most powerful judicial body in the world. And what it decides in America has a very big effect on the way we live in Australia. But take what happened between Al Gore and George W. Bush. In the end, Bush won Florida by 500 votes in an electorate of many tens of millions. There was an intense dispute about which ballots should be counted. You remember the controversy over the hanging chads. Finally, the matter found its way into the Supreme Court. Now, and they ruled in Bush's favour. Now, you're not going to suggest that the judges that Trump nominates will automatically rule in his favour in any electoral dispute. They're not automatons, they're people of integrity. But a Conservative majority on the court will be more likely to rule contentious ballots out of order, more likely to be conservative in the way it interprets the franchise. So this election, if it's close, could end up in the Supreme Court. And if Trump nominates and succeeds in getting his judge, there will be a 6-3 Conservative majority. If he nominates a young woman, she might be there for the next 40 or 50 years. So this is a momentous decision.
Yeah, well, the favourite's 48, I think, from memory. So, 40 years realistically is what we're seeing there. What do you think in terms of the vote itself? How does this feed into the campaigning, Greg?
Well, it does fire up both sides. Traditionally, the Supreme Court has been a bigger issue for the right than it's been for the left. Trump is only president because millions of Christians, evangelicals and Catholics in the United States decided that the ability to appoint conservative judges who would not contradict religious freedom was more important than what they didn't like about Trump's character. I mean, Christian support for Trump is very complex in the United States. A lot of them support Trump in spite of his character, not remotely because of it. And the court was the number one issue. Now, this will motivate all evangelical conservative voters and all conservative Catholics to come out for Trump again. It probably also motivates the left and especially young millennials, especially if the nominee is seen as an out-and-out opponent of abortion rights in the Roe v. Wade matter. the previous justices that Trump has nominated, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, have both said they wouldn't plan to vote against Roe v. Wade. So there is really no serious threat to abortion rights in America. On the other hand, they won't stop states which put on some limitations. But a more unequivocal opponent of Roe v. Wade may fire up Biden's college voters, who he's had a lot of trouble enthusing. So I think it's a net benefit to Trump, but it's pretty dynamic and unpredictable.
Let's turn our attention closer to home, the Taiwan Strait. The tensions have erupted the last few days with Chinese exercises really angering the Taiwanese leadership.
Yes, so what China has been doing here is something it often does to Japan and in a different way to India. It's been intentionally invading Taiwan's airspace, going across the halfway line between Taiwan and mainland China and flying directly and overtly into Taiwan's airspace with its military aircraft. Now, Taiwan, whenever this happens, scrambles its own military aircraft. Now, China is very bolshy about Taiwan at the moment. It wants to humiliate Taiwan. It wants to show that it can take military action against Taiwan if it wants to. And so the Taiwanese president has issued an extraordinary statement in the last 24 hours saying, if we are fired upon by a Chinese military aircraft or a Chinese vessel, we will fire back. And this is a very blunt warning from the Taiwanese president, and it's a very dangerous moment because the conflict could escalate, and the United States is committed to the defence of Taiwan under the Taiwan Relations Act, and Trump certainly is in no mood for backing down anywhere. So the very fact that you have the president of Taiwan, who is a sober, modest, sensible, non-militaristic woman with impeccable democratic credentials, the fact that she feels constrained to make a public statement to Beijing, if you fire on us, we will fire back, shows that this is actually quite a dangerous moment in the Taiwan Straits.
And you've got a situation where you touched on it before, Greg, but just for clarity, the US is much more, I guess it's incumbent upon them to defend and intervene for Taiwan, much more than, say, there is any, suggestion within the ANZUS Treaty for them to act in defence of Australia.
Kieran, to be absolutely honest with you, I don't really think that's true. The wording of the ANZUS Treaty is not quite as explicit as NATO. It doesn't say an attack on one is an attack on all. But it does say if one is attacked, then all the allies will respond about how they will consult about how they respond. And the expectation in the wording of the treaty is that the allies will respond. I also think there's a higher salience of the Australian alliance in American popular culture than there is of the Taiwan alliance. But under the Taiwan Relations Act, when the United States broke diplomatic relations, formal diplomatic relations with Taiwan and transferred those to Beijing, it made it very explicit to Beijing and to Taiwan and to itself that it would continue to provide for the security of Taiwan. Now, that's not a blanket limitless supply guarantee. It made it clear that if Taiwan did something provocative, it could take its own counsel about whether it responded. I mean, the truth, Kieran, is no nation is ever bound by, the words in a treaty. It's bound by its own will. But the United States is very clear and explicit in this legislation and in all the statements of all the presidents that they will provide for Taiwan's security. I mean, the United States talked Taiwan into abandoning its nuclear weapons program, a couple of decades ago. And part of the promise was that they would always shelter under the extended nuclear deterrence of the United States. So it would be a shocking betrayal of Taiwan and also, probably the end of America as a credible international power if it allowed Taiwan to be overwhelmed by its giant communist neighbour. And certainly for China to do something now, 40 days out from a presidential election, would be insanely irresponsible. You'd hope that the Chinese are not that irresponsible, but you just never know for sure.
Greg Sheridan, foreign editor at The Australian. Thanks as always. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Kieran.